Yer. Shout out to the intro. Welcome to Rich Talks, podcast where we do music commentary, cultural commentary, deep dives, and just interesting topics in general. I'm your host, Ankh, aka Ree. Now let's get into it. Y'all, we need to have a little bit of a conversation about a certain type of individual. You know what I mean? Like the type of individual that most likely every one of us kind of knows a person that just kind of happens to fit this description. You know, like today we need to talk about the men who just never grew up. You know, like the ones who can't. Not even can't, because they actually can. I should say the ones that won't act their age, you know what I mean? Like in an almost delusional way of thinking, like the arrested development of their growth. To them, it's some form of like immortality, if you will, right? And it's kind of sad because oftentimes the reality is much darker and sadder. Like, you don't you sometimes kind of like think about the individuals that quote unquote peaked in high school, you know, but like they never actually mentally grew past that at all.
You're a victim.
You know, like I'm throwing all this preamble because today I want to talk about rapper Jim Jones, jokingly known as the world's oldest YN. But at nearly 50, I'm not even sure if he is 50. It's like close enough, right? One thing that you can at least say about him is he's consistent in the fact that he just does not want to grow up mentally. 20 plus years in the rap scene, and he's still more known for like having issues with other people than for like actual impact of his musical discography. And to be honest, that's kind of sad because rap-wise, Jim Jones is actually like very talented, but he's also got such a thin-skinned persona about him that I don't think he can go like a full year without pretty much getting into it with somebody. So today I kind of wanted to highlight for you some of the most controversial issues that followed the illustrious career of one Joseph Guillermo Jones II, better known to the world as Jim Jones. So one thing that I always found interesting and also a little bit strange when it comes to artists using or referencing the names of infamous individuals. Like, I do understand the marketing side of it, obviously, like using the name of an infamous person, it's provocative, right? It grabs people's attention and it makes people want to know more. Sure, we can certainly, we can assign a scale of like how controversial a name is. Like normally with rap and hip hop, like there is an obsession kind of like based on or tied to names of infamous individuals in the world of the Italian mob, or also known as La Cosa Nostra, you know, this thing of ours. And I partially feel like that is it's a bit of a respect thing, you know, like based on paying homage to the mob, right? Like who were, you kind of will. I mean, you know what? They were kind of more willing to work with black gangsters during their golden era than any other ethnic crime families. I guess like maybe the Irish kind of competed a bit there. But obviously this doesn't like give them any type of like moral superiority to like any of the others, considering the business that they were all involved in to begin with, right? But for me, I always kind of wondered why someone who would utilize titles and monikers tied to mafia hierarchy, like Capo, for example, because Jim Jones used the moniker of capo a lot, and a capo it's a short term for a capo regime, which I guess it would be like a similar in status to someone like a captain or a lieutenant if we're talking like military hierarchy or something. But just think about it. Like, why would someone who is so obviously inspired by Mafia Provocateur style, like literally the Mafia Provocateur style, why would that person decide to use the name of one of the worst cult leaders in human history, Jim Jones? Like, the man literally caused the mass self-annihilation of like what, 900 people in Guyana in 1978, and known today as like the Jonestown Massacre, right? Which is also, it also included what, like 200 children in that total, who were all forced to ingest a sedative and cyanide laced grape drink.
What?
And you know, it's kind of funny because that's actually also where the origin of that saying, "they're drinking the Kool-Aid," comes from. You know, pretty messed up, right? But that's where it came from. Like, when somebody's kind of told, when somebody's told that they're drinking the Kool-Aid, it basically means that they unquestionably accept or they follow something, or they're someone who's like very, very gullible, right? Anyways, enough about that sad part of history. Back to the Jimmy file. The first bit of controversy that I kind of wanted to highlight about Jim Jones, the rapper, not the cult leader, is basically how the origins of Diplomats, aka Dipset, actually came to pass. And it's a little bit weird to me anyway. Like, so originally Cameron and Jim Jones, like, they actually ended up bonding and forming Dipset solely over their mutual hate for Mase at the time. You know, and obviously, like, there's a deeper story there, because before Dipset, Cameron was originally a member of the Children of the Corn, which obviously included Mase, who went by Murda Mase at the time, Big L, Duke the God, Herb McGruff, Bloodshed, and R.I.P. Bloodshed, and Six Figure Digga, right? Children of the Corn, they ended up disbanding in 1997 after the passing of Bloodshed. Not after the passing of Big L, but after the passing of Bloodshed. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. And anyways, Mase went on to sign with Bad Boy Records, and you know, maybe it's because he chose to sign with Diddy, but I guess, like, it seems like the tension between the two of them kind of started to form after Cameron, like, he released his debut album, Confessions of Fire, and on the song Horse and Carriage, which is a dope song, by the way. Y'all remember Horse and Carriage? Alright, I'm not gonna do the singing today. Horse and Carriage did feature Mase on it, right? And during the making of the music video for the song, this was over, like, this animosity between these two actually started over a music video. I mean, it gets deeper than that, but like, it's really, the catalyst is just the music video, right? Basically, Cameron asked, well, he had thought his longtime friend to be in the music video for, you know, right? Because Mase was kind of like a star, right? At the time, like, he had signed with Bad Boy. He's like, his name is out there. He's more well known than Cameron, and you know, Mase was on some high horse shit, because, like, instead of helping out his friend, he decided to demand $50,000 just to be in the music video. Yeah, and even though he was already featured on the song, you know what I mean? Like, come on, right? So Cameron, instead basically instead of basically paying 50K, what? Anyway, he decided to basically just hire body double instead for all the scenes that would involve Mace, right? And from there, they would kind of continue to have like a little bit of tension for some time, basically, especially after Mace chose to retire from rap and became a pastor. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit to today, because things have changed, right? People grew up, and you see Mace and Cam'ron, they put all of their issues aside, and now they're successful in their podcast. It is what it is. Shout outs to them, you know, for real. But Jimmy, because this is an episode about Jimmy. It ain't about Mace or Cam'ron. Jimmy hasn't patched things up with nobody, you know. Matter of fact,
what?
Jim Jones still currently has issues with Cam'ron right now in the big 2026, right? The reason he even had issues with Mace apparently was because he was simply being loyal to Cam'ron, and he didn't feel like the way he didn't like the way that he felt Mace was starting to treat Cam'ron differently. He didn't appreciate that. Like, maybe Mace was getting this big head, thinks he's a superstar, and he doesn't like the way that Cam is being treated as Cam's like longtime friend, right? So I guess, like, you know what? Matter of fact, let me actually quote exactly what he said in that interview on Justin LeBoy podcast. He said, I watched Mace shit on Cam and everybody around him, like, all the time. I was Cam's man, you heard? Cam and Mace were so-called best friends, grew up together. I was there for everything. That's one thing people can never say, is that I wasn't there for every single thing. Cam was jumping out the window for him, which a friend should, like being overprotective, making sure nothing happens. He was trying his best to make sure that Mace stayed as safe as possible, but Mace had got that money and lost his motherfucking mind. I mean, that's what Jim Jones said in regards to Mace issues, like basically his issues with Mace right now. And we all know that sometime after all the initial issues between Cam'ron and Mace, that's when the Diplomats group was formed, right? So his story kind of checks out, right? But then you realize the question starts becoming, so if you were so loyal to Cam'ron to the point where you're creating issues with Mace where there really wasn't anything of substance to be mad over, why is it that you, Jim Jones, still have issues with the guy that you claim to be his man? You know what I'm saying?
You're a victim.
Like, why do you still have issues with Cam? And those two guys, you know, who you those two guys who you basically fell out for are now friends again.
You're a victim.
And working together and getting money together, and you're sitting on the outskirts now mad at the both of them.
You nasty.
Who's the kid here? Who didn't grow up here, right? Like, come on, this is childish. Like, nobody got hurt. This is childish that you're still holding on to this grudge. Like, this level of pride is crazy. But that's Jim Jones's MO.
Stop the cap.
Like, now, one way you can kind of see, you can see it as maybe Jim was being like very loyal to a fault, and
what?
Sure, you can see it that way. But that kind of leads me to contend with the thought that I don't actually believe these guys were friends in the conventional sense of the term. Like, I don't think they were ever actually friends like that.
No,
I think the friendship was strictly built out of a convenience and what can you do for me right now mentality. That was basically disguised and packaged like the loyal right-hand man that will stand beside his people against any and everyone.
Stop the cap.
Right? I think he created this false sense of created this shield around him, this shell around him, that he was the most loyal guy in Dipset. You know what I mean?
What?
Like, I say all that to say, I think Jim Jones, although he markets himself as an individual that stands on a foundation of loyalty to a fault, I think the truth of it is, like, he's actually the opposite. Like, I think all of his industry relationships are actually mostly built on foundations of opportunity. I think he's an opportunist. What can you do for me right now sort of situation. And that just has the appearance of loyalty, right? Like, it's either that or he's just mad that Cam and Mace made up and he didn't make peace with Mace, so maybe he's still salty about falling out with Mace for no real substantial reason. Maybe. You know, again, I'm just speculating though, but the crazy part for me is when it comes to Jim Jones falling out with people, you'll actually start to notice a pattern of him always having some sort of public disagreement with someone that sometimes it escalates, or you never hear about it again until they pop out saying they squashed the beef privately. Like, the way this man gets into feuds with people publicly, then privately makes up with them, I think it should be studied, guys. Like the man probably would do well in the WWE, like the way he always getting into it with someone publicly. And the irony is that he's never really been able to properly take advantage of those spurts of attention to either grow his career or, in this case, his mentality, you know? Matter of fact, let's go a little bit deeper into some of like the other feuds that he's been involved in over the years, right? Like, for example, the infamous Rucker Park showdown between Junior Mafia, like Lil C's and Lil Kim, the entourage. Like, come on, you guys know Junior Mafia, and Dipset. Well, specifically Jim Jones and Cameron. Like, did I really say showdown? Like, it wasn't even really like a showdown. It was more like a duel, like maybe a Mexican standoff. You know what I mean? I swear I'm not being racist. It's like, just look up Mexican standoff if you don't know what I mean by that. Like, just a duel between two warring factions or like anything of that sort. It was really more of like a bravado matching contest, you know, because the only reason that these two crews even had any type of static to begin with was simply because members from both sides would kind of like take little jabs at each other here and there, and like the back and forth really just stemmed from each crew claiming to be the best crew. It's in New York or in Harlem or wherever they are. It's really rivalry. It was nothing like, I wouldn't even call it beef, right? But anyways, this was an incident, right? So the incident that went down, it kind of went down like this. Cam and Jimmy were at Rucker Park playing some pickup basketball, and several members of Junior Mafia crew basically pulled up. And in an attempt to kind of intimidate this new crew of rappers who were, to them, not showing proper respect to Junior Mafia, right? Because, they're Junior Mafia, correct? The funny thing is, it did not go the way that they planned at all, really, because even though they were like completely outnumbered, and Cam and Jimmy basically they just stood their ground. Because the two crews, like, come on, you have like a group of dudes who are known as the Junior Mafia crew, and they're trying to like lil bro Cam and Jimmy, and they just stood their ground. Like, so what, right? So then basically it caused the two crews to kind of get into like a tense shouting match, you know, like threats being thrown at each other on both sides, but no actual punches were thrown and nobody actually fought. You know, it's kind of like in the NBA, when it's like, when the guys start getting more hype when their coach starts holding them back, or when one of their teammates start holding them back, so they start hyping up even more to try to make it seem like, oh yeah, they're really angry and they're ready to swing, and then like you just move out the way and they don't do anything.
What?
But yeah, You know, because like I really wish that there was some video footage of it, because I feel like that's just basically how it went down, right? But unfortunately there's no actual video footage of the incident, and it was never really like covered by the news. So it essentially like became one of those tales of the streets type of stories that kind of creates these kind of street legends and these legendary feats for certain celebrities. And again, it almost gives like that WWE type feeling, you know what I mean? Like, cause if you knew nothing about these guys and you heard a story like this, wouldn't your perception of Jim Jones be something like, damn, this guy's like fearless and loyal to his friends, right? I'm just gonna that gets a real, yeah, all right. So in the early 2000s, as Dipset continues their rise to fame, right? It was a continued pattern of them kind of having tensions with other New York crews and groups, and it started to become more evident that this was a pattern, or like maybe they were kind of leaning into it, because it almost became like their MO. For example, like around 2006, there was a growing tension that was forming between Jay-Z's Rockefeller affiliates and Dipset's affiliates. And it was like that year, Jim Jones' song "We Fly High" was starting to gain like a lot of traction, and also around this time there was like a popular trend that rappers used to love doing to like showcase their skills and their versatility. But it feels like now it's like a slowly dying concept, you know, the trend of known as jacking for beats, because I don't think you can really do that anymore, because everyone like copyrights and monetizes their stuff, because like I guess their intellectual property is just more important to them than actually expanding their brand. Because like if you allowed your beats to be rapped on by other rappers, that brings more attention to it, meaning that they might go looking for the original, and maybe they'll get you on a like there's so much avenues that they could have done, but like it feels like it's gone by the wayside. And basically, let me explain jacking for beats. And basically like another rapper like using your beat to make their own version of a song. And in this case, when the reason I brought up the "We Fly High" song, because Jay-Z dropped his own track on the "We Fly High" beat called "Brooklyn High," where he was clearly taking shots at Jim Jones and Dipset's success. Like, it was very, very, very clear. And basically on the track, during the hook of "Brooklyn High," where on "We Fly High," where you would have the part where Jim Jones would jump in and go ballin'. Instead, on Jay-Z's version, you had him yelling out "Brooklyn!" You know, so obviously Jimmy didn't take that. He didn't take that slight. He didn't take kindly to that. Come on, like. And he ended up dropping another version of his song "We Fly High," but this version was called the Beef Mix, where they were all going in, like, you know, it happens. So then at some point during this beef saga, right, a very, let me just say, serious New York rappers by the name. Yeah, like this rapper was so serious. His name was True Life, right? A very serious rap. He wasn't just a rap. I think this guy was more street than rap, right? So he had basically signed to Jay-Z's Rock La Familia label, which was like an offshoot of the Rockefeller brand. True Life took it upon himself to be like the shield for his label boss, you know, because he felt like he owed Jay-Z that. So Jim Jones versus True Life. Woo! It all started with True Life publicly dissing Jimmy and Cameron in interviews and recordings. He called them bitches, and he was basically like disrespecting them, right? Fair enough. So eventually it would lead to Jim Jones literally challenging True Life to a fight for $50,000 to like settle it in the ring, like, man, which is actually, that's not a bad idea, right? But True Life did not accept the offer. I mean, at least publicly he didn't accept the offer. And then things started to escalate further, like when True Life started showing off what what looked like Jim Jones's Diplomats and One-Eyed Willie chains in radio interviews, claiming that if you really want it back, baby boy, send over them 10 stacks. And then he added, I had it on eBay, but I took it off. We don't want shit like this. This 10 carat bullshit. Yeah, basically implied that they robbed Jim Jones of his Diplomat chain and his One-Eyed Willie chain. And if you want it back, you better give up like 10 stacks to get it back. And he's also claiming the authenticity of the chain, claiming that I put it on eBay and I took it off immediately because like this is some 10 carat shit. This ain't like real. Yeah, they were just going in, right? So shortly after that, True Life dropped a mixtape called True York. And that was even more disrespectful. Like, let me tell you, the cover art alone for True York had a photoshopped picture of Jim Jones in a Borat style thong. Hey, yo. I remember that album cover too, because that was wild. You know, like it was a time where the mixtape era, if your mixtape didn't stand out from like the cover, like they had to do wild different things to make your mixtape stand out. Or if the name of your mixtape DJ didn't stand out, then it's like it was hard for you to kind of push it unless you were really trying to market your stuff, right? Anywho, I genuinely think that Dipset also kind of helped influence an entire generation of internet troll culture.
What?
Yeah, seriously. Simply in the fact that they did what they did in response, like the things that they did in response to the True Life's disses and his disrespect and his antagonism. Listen, some Dipset affiliates, obviously connected to Jim Jones, hacked True Life's MySpace page. Yeah. Yo, I'm telling you, like back in 2007, that was the platform to use, like MySpace and Black Planet and all that. Like those were the platforms to use to like kind of help you promote yourself, right? Like the hackers replaced all of True Life's music and his photos with Dipset content. And they even altered his profile info to humiliate him. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Like back in 2007, this was a thing. Like if you were like logged into a social media platform like MySpace or, well, this was before Facebook.
Stop the cap.
I guess MySpace was like the Facebook back then, and like if you didn't, actually no, Facebook was active back then. I'm losing it. Yes, it was. It was MySpace or Facebook. And if you didn't like log out of your stuff or left your account unattended for whatever reason, yo, it was open season. it was almost like expected that you come back to your profile saying something very sus, something wild, and bruh. Like I remember, I just bad memories of my Facebook getting hacked back in the college days. Those are crazy, man. I am speaking from experience. Womp womp. I'm not gonna go into detail on what happened there. Anyways, things died down between them for like a while, and after that, because True Life was kind of like dealing with his own personal demons, he kind of pleaded guilty to gang assault
You nasty.
in 2011, and he was sentenced to like 8 years in prison. And you know, after his release, the same year that Jim Jones signed with Rock Nation,
What?
the irony, guys, this is crazy, right? That was also the same year that he cleared the air with Jay-Z. I'll give Jim Jones respect in that regard, that he did clear the air with Jay-Z, right? But I put that with an asterisk. The reason being is because, sure, you pieced it up with Jay-Z, but that was because you ended up signing with Rock Nation, right? So that was, again, goes back to being an opportunist. Like, what can you do for me right now? If you can make me money by allowing me to sign this Rock Nation deal, then what beef, right? What issues? This is what I'm talking about with like Jim Jones, and like he actually doesn't grow up and always has this. It feels like he gives off the idea that he's changed or something like that. Like he'll show like these little glimpses of maturity, and then it just reverts. Anyways, back to the True Life. Literally, yo, I'm telling you, True Life is a whole episode in himself, I think. Like, the man had so much going on, so much going for him, actually. He had so much going for him. But at this point, like, I feel like he's more remembered for what he went to prison for than anything else. Like, think about it. Like, 50 Cent stated on his track Flight 187, right? Every time a mention of True Life comes up, I actually remember this line in 50's song Flight 187 when he's like, "Today I read the paper, it said True Life caught a case. They said they found the victim with a knife stuck in his face."
What?
Yikes.
You're a victim.
Like, yo, what? Like, yeah, think about that. Imagine the what if scenario of how things could have played out if their beef actually had continued and True Life didn't go to jail. I hate to imagine what the things that could have happened, because like it just seems like these guys were like, it would have escalated is what I feel like would have happened. Like, it went from trolling, but the trolling would have eventually escalated if these guys had continued, or if True Life career didn't get derailed by whatever the hell they did there. Like, the victim with a knife in his face? Bruh. Jeez. Anyways, yeah. Now let's talk about Jimmy versus Max B, because this one was very, very interesting for many reasons. And you may find this surprising, but I'm kind of a little bit, just a little bit, I'm kind of on Jim Jones' side in this particular situation. Just a bit. Like, I'm gonna throw him some bail, just a little bit in this situation. So the timeline for this is like a little bit confusing, but like the key points about this one are as such. Okay. Jim Jones signed Max B and Stack Bundles, RIP, to his Bird Gang imprint, right? Because Cameron was not really interested in signing Max at the time to Dipset, and Max and Stack Bundles essentially would like go on to help write the hooks for Jim Jones, particularly for We Fly High. Yes, the hook for We Fly High was assisted, like the writing for the hook of We Fly High was assisted by Max B and Stack Bundles. Yeah. And around this time in the early 2000s, like, once again known as the mixtape era, it was a time when artists, you would have to kind of use mixtapes as a platform to gain more visibility and appeal. And in a way, it was kind of used to pressure the labels in a bit, to kind of like offer more of a budget for the artist to be able to release official studio albums, right? And although everyone loved mixtapes back then, you couldn't really push it commercially because the music wasn't licensed. Hence why oftentimes mixtapes, what did I say? Mixtapes? Mixtapes would be done by the artist for free as a way for them to self-promote and like kind of get their name out there, right? And Max B did very well on the mixtape circuit. And Stack Bundles was also actually projected to do very, very well too. However, here's where the cracks started to form in the relationship, right? Solely based on their individual work ethics, Jim saw that Stack Bundles was taking his career very seriously. So whenever Stack would need something, Jim would be ready to provide it for him. He would be ready, willing, and able. However, this was not the same for Max B, right? Jim offered, it's like he had a more tough love approach when it came to Max, because Max was just, to be fair, like as great and as talented as Max was, he was inconsistent in his seriousness of his career, right? Basically, he was like still doing things in the street that would eventually get him caught up, and then like they escalated, like the issues between him and Jim even further, right? Because of that constant, it's almost like maybe if he treated Max the same way that he treated Stack, things would have been different, or maybe not, because at the end of the day, these are still two grown-ass men. And I agree with Jim Jones on the tough love approach, because it's a grown-ass man at the end of the day, and you can only do so much. Like, if he's not going to show consistency, then like what, like you as the head of the company or whatever, as the employer, like, yo, you have to insulate yourself. Like, you have to ensure that you get your return on investment, right? So sometime in 2007, Max B would get arrested along with his on-again, off-again girlfriend at the time and his stepbrother in New York for their involvement in a failed robbery turned homicide in New Jersey in September of 2006. Yeah, crazy stuff, man. Originally, Max was sent to Rikers Island in New York, and his bail was initially set at like $1.2 million, right? And considering that around the same time, Jim Jones had just dropped his album Hustler's Poem at the time, and it had features by Max, and I guess him thinking that it was a smarter decision, Jim Jones told Max to sit for a bit to see if the judge was willing to kind of lower the bail amount. Unfortunately, this actually had the exact opposite impact. For whatever reason, assuming some new information was provided to the judge maybe, but rather than lowering the bail, the judge actually raised the bail conditions to $2 million.
What?
And they also actually wanted additional collateral on top of that, likely based on Max's criminal history, right? So I don't know if some of y'all are familiar with how bail conditions really work, but consider this. If the person who you bailed out either fails to show for their court dates or breaks their conditions in any way, that bail money is just put up. The bail money you put up, it's forfeit. It's gone. So imagine that. If you're in Jim Jones's position and your artist needs $2 million just for bail, not for trial or whatever, just for bail. I mean, like, you would be a little hesitant too, man. Like, or you'd be a little bit mad too, right? I think it's a little bit warranted in how Jim Jones felt in his reaction, right? So an angry Jim, rightfully so, was not having it, right? So he set the condition that he'll put up a little more than half the required amount, right? But Max would actually have to find someone to provide the rest of the money, and Max agreed. Fair, right? But after 10 months on Rikers Island, would you blame him for agreeing to that? Like, come on, man. Yes, I'm agreeing. What? Get me out of here.
Stop the cap.
Get me the F out of here. So, here's the weird thing though. A month before the release, Stack Bundles tragically lost his life in Far Rock, New York.
What?
So this is where I really understand where Jimmy is coming from a little bit. Like, he not only just lost one of his two biggest stars, and the other one is an inconsistent one, with his future being unclear, because basically he's just coming out on bail and he's still facing potential decades in prison, right? And yet, even after all of that, after weighing all of that, Jim Jones still decided to go and get Max out on bail, right? So at this point, Jim Jones would be a little bit weary of Max and his actions, right? Because for one thing, they didn't really grow up together the same way that he kind of grew up with Cam. So he doesn't really know how the looming threat of potentially facing decades in prison is going to weigh on that man's head mentally, right? I mean, how would it weigh on any grown person mentally? But again, if you didn't really grow up with the person, you don't know them to that intimately, if you will, right? So at this point, Jim tells Max that he needs to sign over his publishing to him.
What?
This is where it's like, yo, this is kind of predatory, man. I felt like this was kind of predatory. But I understand. At the time, I understand. So basically, so that in the event that he ever decided that if Max ever decides to like go on the run, or if Max ever lost his bail money, then at least Jim Jones can make back a portion of his money through Max's publishing. And whenever he would get his bail money back, then he would return Max's publishing back to him.
Stop the cap.
Sounds fair, right? Sounds like a reasonable deal at first. Now, unfortunately, they're like, come on, like this is just so predatory, right? Because you have, think about it from the artist perspective. Max B, who's both in a desperate situation, literally looking at several decades in prison, and also a guy from the street who's not too savvy and not too keen on the workings of publishing contracts and the importance of maintaining your own intellectual property at the time. So he agreed to the terms of that contract, right? And I mean, it could be argued that he kind of agreed being under duress, because like, look at the position he was put in, right? Now, those that know, just know that Max B was and still is super talented. But, you know, having talent or being talented does not equate to you being successful. And if you're starting your career off in a position of servitude, if you sign away all your publishing and you haven't even gotten a market value for your own work yet, it's like, how do you know you're not being overutilized and underpaid? Like, just the way that they had that contract, like, how would Max even know if he was ever gonna get his publishing back? it was very naive for sure, but a desperate man will do desperate things, I guess, right? I've never been in such a position, and I truly hope that I never am put in such a position where I have to make a decision like that under such desperate options, you know? And so Max gets out and they start recording Harlem's American Gangster, right? And also they were also I think Harlem's American Gangster, that was gonna be Max B's debut album. And they also were doing the Bird Gang album. However, Max saw not even $1
What?
from any of these projects because Jim owns his publishing, right? Fair enough, right? Because Jim wants to make sure that he gets his money back before anything else. Okay. But Max, being the wild boy that he was, and obviously not having the foresight to think about how something like what he was about to do would kind of mess up his career, he decided to jump out the window and dropped I'ma Do Me, which was literally a straight up diss track to Jim Jones, and he got really out of pocket on there, like really out of pocket. He even went after Jim Jones's wife Chrissy with the bars, "You're nothing with no Max B. I won't help you, so don't ask me. Where's my paper, bitch? You owe me. Chrissy think I'm cute. She wants to blow me."
What?
Yeah. Like, yo, this was just the first song of many, as Max goes on a campaign of just like dissing Jim and Bird Gang as a whole. But that wasn't even the wildest one.
Stop the cap.
Like, to be honest, I think the one that genuinely got to Jim Jones mentally, if he didn't publicly react to it, was the song, because he didn't publicly react to the song, but I know it got to him. The song was called "She Touched It in Miami."
You're a victim.
I'm telling you, yo, the man actually took Tupac's whole concept of like that one line that he dropped in Hit 'Em Up. "That's why I fucked your bitch, you fat motherfucker."
What?
He took that and cranked it up to like 10, basically, and turned it into an entire hook. Right? Max turned his diss into an entire hook, making the assertion that that he had sex with Jim Jones's wife, Chrissy. In the hook, he's basically like, she touched it in Miami. She touched it in Miami. Told me at opium she loves it in a fanny. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'd be mad too, man. I would be so mad. What? Like, at least Tupac had the respect to just say the one line, and it wasn't even. I mean, he also said, "First off, fuck your bitch." Man, how could you? Damn, that was just. Yeah. Anyways, so Jim stays quiet at first because he basically owns Max B, right? So anything that Max decided to do, Jim would make money out of it, right? And also, Max was technically unable to sign any other deals, make or drop any albums, nothing at all without Jimmy getting paid, right? And unfortunately, this type of behavior is not new to the industry because it almost parallels what happened after Dr. Dre left or tried to leave Ruthless Records to start Death Row Records with Suge Knight. Because back then, even when Death Row, I remember when Death Row Crew dropped the Eazy-E diss track, Dre Day. Eazy was still making money off of that track, off of that record. Like, even though he was the one that was being dissed, right? Another instance of this I can kind of recall was remember when The Game was beefing with all of G Unit. Like, remember when Game went crazy? He was like dissing G Unit at every opportunity. He started the GU Not movement, the Stop Snitching, Stop Lying campaign, dropped 300 bars, all of that. Well, I'm almost certain that 50 Cent actually earned more from all of those disses that the Game sent to him than the Game himself made during that same run. I really think that's some 4D chess right there. Like, that's crazy, right? But one thing I didn't really understand about this whole mess between them, and at the time, was one, Jim, you're his boss for one, and two, you literally had him sign away all of his publishing. So why exactly would you not look to keep your potential cash cow on at least some semblance of good terms, right? Because listen, for Max, it got so bad monetarily that the only way Max was able to afford the apartment that he ended up that he ended up in, and he also built a studio inside of it. The only way he was able to earn money to do this was by pawning off all the jewelry that Jim Jones had lent him. Not even gave to him, lent him. He told him, "You're like, hold this," and he pawned it off. At least, like, it was crazy, man. Like, he was making no money at all, and that was at least until he met and teamed up with the host and producer of the street DVD series known as Cocaine City. That producer going by the name at the time Young French, who would eventually be recognized as a rapper we all know and love today as French Montana, right? Now, Jim Jones would go on to have his own issues with French Montana patterns, as well as simply because he was collaborating with Max B, right? Who was, I guess, because he was dissing Jim at every opportunity he got. But, like, think about this. Jimmy, you're making money off of every one of those disses, right? But from Max's point of view, I can understand the frustration, right? He felt like Jimmy was trying to suppress him, not paying him, while also keeping him in such a horrible contract. And I think a lot of artists, even to this day, are in like similar situations with these predatory contracts and these 360 deals where they feel like they're enslaved by the contracts that they sign. But then they also have to kind of take a little bit of onus on that, because like you have to read the contract, man. You have to read, you gotta negotiate. That's just how it is, right? Eventually Jim Jones and French Montana would make peace in like 2020 regarding their issues though. So, and just last year, ahead of Max B's release from prison after serving 16 years of a 75-year sentence, Max publicly stated that he intends to squash the beef with Jim Jones as well. But honestly, we'll have to kind of see how things go, because Jimmy hasn't really said anything publicly in response. And judging by the way he's moving lately, I don't think he really cares to actually squash it publicly, at least. Now, if you look at Jimmy's life at a glance, you kind of realize, even at his big age, this man's still getting into conflicts and altercations with people. Like, there was the time when he got arrested at Foxwoods Resort for getting into a brawl with some people after a Diddy party. Yup, Jim Jones was at a Diddy party. I'm gonna leave it right there. Or the incident in 2018 where he was in a car with some people, and after a short high-speed chase, grown-ass man in a car with some people, and there was a high-speed chase. Come on, Jim Jones, what's wrong with you? Jimmy and others were arrested, and the cops ended up finding weed, pills, vape cartridges, and of course, 2 loaded pistols. There was also the viral video of him getting into a fight with a random dude at the airport. Now, one pattern to me that seems consistent with Jim Jones is constantly falling out with other famous Harlem natives. Obviously, Cameron and Mace are two great examples, but sometimes people forget that he also has issues with Dame Dash. Like, they originally started off cool because, like, they were both from Harlem and they even did, like, some business together. But somewhere along the way, as it seems to occur with many people that Jim Jones does business with, and I guess I can say the same about Dame Dash. He's not a saint either in his own right, but like somewhere along the way, things turned sour between these two, right? In 2014, Jim Jones publicly called Dame Dash a culture vulture and a thief for not properly compensating him for the business venture that they had done together. For example, the Vampire Life brand that they had started together. Now, I'm not gonna say that Jimmy was wrong to confront Dame about the handling of their business, but at some point, like during their issues, and actually video footage of the incident was recently brought up about it. There was an instance where someone had like recorded Jim Jones and an entourage of people confronting Dame Dash in a parking lot where he's by himself, and it looks like Jim Jones is trying to like get his entourage to jump Dame, right? But all respect due to Dame Dash, because even in the footage he doesn't back down, and he basically requests a one-on-one fight with Jim Jones, who from the footage he didn't really take up the offer, right? And then there's his weird, and I would say it is very weird. He has a weird like admiration / obsession with 50 Cent. I call it admiration because honestly, what else can you really look at it as besides an antagonistic admiration of sorts? Like, the original issue kind of started from the fact that both crews, like Diplomats and G-Unit, were when they were blowing up at the same time, right? As rival crews do. There was like some tension that started to form due to like some of the back and forth being had, like when 50 took a swipe at Dipset for being on Koch Records at the time, basically calling Koch a graveyard for artists. And of course, Jim Jones, who was signed to Koch Records at the time, took issues with that. Fair enough, right? But in the midst of all of that rivalry and the two crews were having, like basically the rivalry that the two crews were having in 2007, Jim Jones and Joel Santana both joined 50 Cent on stage at a show, not realizing until 50 would admit years later in an interview that he intentionally pulled Jimmy into the performance with him on stage to optically, like basically visually destabilize Cameron's position as a potential threat as a rival crew, right? To be honest, that's a very Machiavellian thing to do of 50 Cent, and was probably a very smart thing to do too, but like looking back on it, don't you also think it kind of highlighted the lack of cohesion, like the lack of respect, maybe like the lack of camaraderie amongst the Diplomats themselves? You know what I mean? Like, if cracks were forming that early in the game for them, then you already know it was what they had. It was something that was not built to last, right? So, speaking of things that were not built to last, the Tekashi 6ix9ine situation. Like you normally, you know, that's a crazy one. Normally I give pushback to people who like to throw around the word snitch all the time, because you really can't call someone a snitch unless they were involved in the same activities as the person that they are giving up for a lighter sentence. You can call them a stool pigeon, you can call them a tattletale, like call them all sorts of those things, but not a snitch, right? But unless they were involved in those acts with you, and usually those acts involve criminal actions, right? In this case, with Tekashi 6ix9ine, it actually does fit. Like labeling him a snitch, it actually does fit, because not only was 6ix9ine involved in criminal acts on camera, he also helped organize and or facilitate such actions. So when he was on trial for that RICO case, and decided to testify that Jim Jones, who he described as a retired rapper,
You're a victim.
wild, was in fact an active member of the 9 Trey Gangster Bloods. I mean, the legitimacy of this accusation was kind of bolstered when the prosecutor played a recorded phone conversation between Jimmy and a 9 Trey Bloods leader, Mel Murda, basically discussing Tekashi. And in the recording, you can actually hear an individual who sounds an awful lot like Jim Jones suggest that 6ix9ine needs to get super violated, and it doesn't really take much subtext to interpret what he was suggesting. Like basically, he was suggesting that someone needed to put hands on 6ix9ine in a violent way to keep him in line. You know what I mean? So I think that like what really got to Jimmy the most though was the fact that in late 2024, 50 appeared on Cameron's You're Welcome network.
What?
And they had a conversation, like seemingly kind of patching up any of the differences that they had with each other in the past. And it was actually in this interview where 50 kind of explained exactly how he used that shaky allegiance that certain Dipset members had during their crew's quote-unquote war, and the two of them basically laughed it off. Like I'm saying, Cameron and 50 really just laughed it off. Right? And obviously Jimmy didn't take too kindly to this, right? Seeing the two men that he's had long-standing issues with good with each other and talking smack about him in particular. So in a later interview, Jim Jones made it clear that his decision to join 50 Cent on stage was because he didn't feel like Cameron was steering his career on the right path.
Stop the cap.
Okay. I'd say that's an interesting take, to say the least. So why did he stay on with the Diplomats? That I call bullshit. Like honestly, I call bullshit. But that's what he said.
Stop the
you know.
cap.
But you know what else is an interesting take that Jim Jones has mentioned or kind of like brought up before? The man once said that this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Being a rapper is the most dangerous job in the world.
Stop the cap.
And then he doubled down on it too. Like when the reaction really didn't go the way that he expected it to go. All right, so obviously he was trying to like make a point based on the fact that a lot of rappers have been losing their lives lately, like especially in recent years. But even with how tragic it is that all of those brothers did lose their lives, it's still nowhere remotely close to being the most dangerous job in the world. Because think of it like this. you literally bring on the energy that you choose to put out. If you're constantly going around having problems with different people wherever you go, well, how's the saying go? You reap what you sow, right?
You're a victim.
Like the energy that you put out is the energy that you get back. And the fact that a grown-ass man of this advanced age can't see that like he can't see that shows that maybe even his own circle doesn't really have many honest individuals in it. Like he can't see that? I don't get it. He's older than me. Like, come on. And I also think that he has like a heavy lack of self-awareness
You're a victim.
in the sense that if you go through his long-standing beef issues with people, just think about this. When he sided with Cameron because he had issues with Mace at the time, why does it so happen that all these years later, Cam and Mace are good again? Jimmy's on the outskirts.
Nasty.
What about when he chose to go on stage with 50 at the time, when his crew, the Diplomats, had some static with G-Unit, right? Now 50 and Cam are back cool with each other. And once again, Jimmy is on the outs.
Nasty.
It's funny that Jim Jones always made it appear like he was doing for others, but the reality was he was lying. Like straight up, he was lying to himself. He was lying to everybody. He's really just about his money. But maybe that's just a Harlem thing. I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. And no shots at people from Harlem, but a lot of y'all, I don't know, man. Like I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. So I recently saw someone had said a line that I found very powerful. People need to realize you're not helping anyone grow by lying to them and or ignoring their mistakes. Let me hit you with that again. People need to realize you're not helping anyone grow by lying to them and or ignoring their mistakes. And I think this line actually uniquely applies to the individuals that suffer from that Peter Pan syndrome, in the sense that they never actually grow up because
You're a victim.
the lie that they tell themselves is enabled and supported by those around them not being truly honest with them in order to, I don't know, to protect feelings, keep the peace, get their way, whatever the reasoning is. There's certain things that we do for children in terms of not being honest with them completely in regards
What?
to well, like in all regards. Yeah, not in regards to, in all regards. Because their brains have not developed to a degree that will allow their minds to comprehend or handle the complete honesty or the reality of certain things in life. So we choose to omit, we censor, we stretch the truth in order to help them regulate their feelings a little bit better. And I don't think the same can be applied for adults, because the adults have the ability to properly reason and comprehend the reality of life. However, it seems like some people choose to live in a state of arrested development, in a sort of pseudo reality that's exacerbated by people not being real with them. And to me, that in itself comes from a place that lacks respect for the individual. I sometimes feel like the people who have clearly defined boundaries and roles are the ones that respect each other the most. Even if that person is an adversary.
What?
Yeah, because actually, oftentimes, the ones that claim are your enemies are the most honest ones, because they clearly let you know that you two are adversarial and there are lines drawn in the sand, clear lines drawn where everybody can see, right? And then there's enough respect in that regard that, hey, I don't get along with this person, so I'll clearly set those boundaries. See, an adversary will clearly point out your mistakes. They might even relish in it or highlight it. But in a sense, they're also clearly respecting you enough to show you the fact that to show you that fact that they are willing to relish or highlight your misgivings without deception. Like they're letting you know, yes, I'm relishing in that. I'm your adversary. I don't like you, but I'm not going to be deceptive because I am clearly showing you that I don't like you. Right? So that's literally, they're being straight up, they're being honest, and they're letting you know what it is. While someone who enables you, right? Someone who enables you to continue in your state of Peter Pan syndrome is generally that quote unquote friend that is simply trying to be supportive, trying to support you in whatever it is that you're doing without trying to shake up the status quo or take on the role of the adversary, even on a temporary basis, right? Like, let me put it like this. For those of you that have children, right? You obviously love your kids no matter what. That's obvious. But you know, come on, y'all. You know that I know that you know that I know that just as humans, you're not gonna like them all the time, right? Like,
What?
the same applies for your significant others, for your friends, your parents, your siblings, your coworkers. It applies to everyone, right?
Not the cap.
Remember the term good cop, bad cop? It's kind of the same thing here, right? One plays the role of the adversary while the other lies to you and gives you a false sense of security or delusion, lulls you into so you're more willing to do something for them.
You're a victim.
So I kind of find it strange sometimes when someone will play these selective games with some individuals where they'll mask the hard truth behind so many other sweet nothings that the key point becomes lost and the cycle perpetuates. Because I'm not saying that everybody who does this is doing it intentionally or even consciously. Some people have avoidant natures. Some people do not like to stir the pot. Some people hate conflict. I get all of that. But the deepest and strongest relationships and bonds that we have with the people in our lives are the ones that can sometimes be a little adversarial. Because these are the only ways that we can help the other individual grow. As they say, pressure can create diamonds or it can burst pipes. Obviously, everyone is different, and the way that they absorb honesty is really dependent on themselves. But that shouldn't deter any of us from actually being that honest friend, especially if we're actually trying to see our people grow with us, right? Like, living in an echo chamber is as detrimental as the Ouroboros. You know, the snake that eats its own tail. Like, you eventually stop growing and things self-destruct. Right? Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna leave it off with this last quote that I read as well. And yeah, because I feel like I've been talking so long, but I'm gonna leave it off with this last powerful quote for you. People who oh, sorry. Whoa, I didn't even read the whole quote. People who respect you look for clarity. People who dislike you look for offense. Explaining more won't fix it. Appeasing them won't either. Hope that didn't go over your head. And with that, I'm out of here, y'all. Salute to the outro. Peace.